Give us your main takeaway, because Donald Trump's saying a peace deal is going to happen really soon or not at all.
Well, of course, remember, Donald Trump told us during the campaign he was going to make peace with between Ukraine and Russia in 24 hours. And in fact, he would do it before he was inaugurated. Of course, neither of those things happened, and so we should take everything he says on this stuff with a certain grain of salt. It's a hard negotiation to have because, in fact, you have two parties that are very dug in, have a great deal of interest in this, and don't see it the way that Trump sees it. He thinks that now that he got his rare minerals deal with Ukraine, which he's going to sign at the White House tomorrow with Zelensky, that's the main thing, because for him, that's how he rolls, right? Money matters. He likes to see something coming back to the United States for all the aid that has been sent to Ukraine. But actually convincing Vladimir Putin to accept a peace deal and accepting Zelensky to accept any peace deal that Putin would accept, that's a whole different thing. That's super hard. And I don't think that they have really fully confronted just how hard that's going to be.
I know we don't have all the details, Peter, but this rare minerals deal, do we know exactly or even remotely what we're getting? Or could this be for show? Donald Trump says, like, we're getting something back, but we don't actually know what it is.
Yeah, we haven't seen the final version. We have seen some draft versions of it. And what I've heard from people who are familiar with it, it sounds like it's more about, making a statement than it is, something very concrete. We'll see what the details actually are. But, what I know that the Ukrainians have been told by some of their allies is that they should go ahead and sign. It won't be very enforceable anyway. It's years down the road. A lot of these minerals are actually in the Russian-controlled territory anyway. They seem to have taken out the specific $500 billion number that the Trump people had insisted on early from that draft, as far as we can tell. So we'll look at the details tomorrow. But my guess is it's more about Trump being able to say he delivered something for the American people, and we'll see what the actual deal is.
We saw him do the exact same things in banking when he would basically get a shoddy deal with a counterpart, but he'd say to them, this is what we need to tell the New York Post because I want to save face. But in this case, it'll work with him, with his voters, because they're going to say he talked tough and we got something back without anyone knowing the details. But Luke, what does it say that some of our closest allies are coming here, one after the other, to try to reason with President Trump about Vladimir Putin?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is an extraordinary situation for an American president. Typically in this situation, an American president would be trying to put the squeeze, put the penalties, put the payments onto the country that invaded the other country. You look back in history, World War I, World War II, it was the countries that invaded the other ones that ended up having to pay a ton of money at the end of these wars. And so Trump is now, putting the pressure on our traditional ally, Ukraine. And so you have the British Prime Minister coming. You're going to have more leaders trying to get him to see the world in the traditional way that America has approached the world, which is standing with allies, standing up against aggression. But Donald Trump really views other countries through the transactional lens and how much money can you get out of them. And that's why you're seeing him with the tariffs and going after, a traditional ally, Canada, immediately after getting into office. So it's just a completely different worldview. And it's very, very different from any president in recent memory. You might have to go back hundreds of years to find an American president that views the world the way that Donald Trump does.
Then, Sam, is this a lost cause on the part of the British Prime Minister or others? We know Donald Trump's affection for Vladimir Putin. It runs deep.
I don't think it's a lost cause. A couple days ago, Trump was talking about how Vladimir Putin was the victim of this war and that it was Ukraine that started it. And I think his rhetoric has obviously moved off that. Similarly, it looked like this minerals deal was dead. Zelensky had rejected it. In doing so, it incurred the wrath of a bunch of Trump people. I think through direct and probably a bit gentle diplomacy, some of these world leaders, including Macron, have been able to move Trump and his team a little bit more towards prolonging the war, supporting Ukraine, or at least being open to the possibility. So I don't think it's a lost cause. But in the end, ultimately, it's true. Donald Trump has a different worldview than any modern or not even, president in the last century. And the idea that he would ally himself with Putin. We know this. He did it all during his first term. That does seem to be hanging over everything that's happening, including Zelensky's trip tomorrow.
Well, he also called Zelensky a dictator just a few days ago, and he was asked about it today, and I want to share how he responded.
Mr. President, do you still think that Mr. Zelensky is a dictator?
Did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Next question.
Peter, how do you see this meeting going if the president is saying, I don't recall I said that? Come on now.
Well, of course, he did say it, and I think he remembers that he said it. But look, Trump does this all the time. He will be more than happy to insult and criticize and use derogatory language about usually friends when they're not in the room. But when they're in the room or about to come to the room, suddenly he puts on, his show of charisma and friendliness and bonhomie and all of that. So it's not surprising he's done that. So we might expect tomorrow when Zelensky arrives that they will look like friends, that they will act like friends, they will talk like friends. But the real test of that isn't when he's in the room. The real test of that is after he's left. What does Trump say then? What does he really mean? What does he really think? And what he really thinks is that Ukraine is not the good guy here, is not the victim. It's a villain. He has thought Ukraine for years was out to get him. That traces back to his 2019 impeachment, where he basically tried to pressure Ukraine into being an ally against Joe Biden. So there's a lot of history here. He'll probably make nice tomorrow with Ukraine as he did today, but that doesn't really tell us about where he's at.